Thank you for coming today to Scott's Celebration of Life. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We want everybody to have a chance to talk to Judy and we do. I'm Mike Champion, Scott's oldest son, and we're going to start off with some music by one of the local groups, Alethea. Who are friends of Greg and Heather's. They're going to play some of Scott's music for everybody. So while you're finishing up in the line, talk to Judy. But here in just a couple minutes, we're going to start with a little bit of music, and then Dan, Greg, and I are just going to talk with them about that. So thank you all again for coming. Yeah. You, as often as I could have. Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have. If I back in the day, oh, I'm sorry, I was glad you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. Maybe I hold you lonely time. Yes, I told you that I'm so happy you're mine. I think I took the time. You were always on my mind. You were always on my mind. Tell me if we both have the time. Give me one more chance to keep you satisfied. When I keep you satisfied.
Head Start.
Okay. Yeah, eat the sun protection.
I still never took the time. You're always on my You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind.
Ew, 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 ew.
Right.
Someone just killed the squirrel and it was like half alive and half dead.
Fantastic. As I said, I'm Mike Champion. I'm Scott's oldest son. And Dan and Greg are here, middle son and youngest. And we're just going to talk a little bit about our dad and different aspects of his life. I'm going to go first and talk about him as a scientist and educator. As you know, most of you know, Scott was a professor of biochemistry. He had faculty positions at UC Irvine, University of Georgia, University of Texas in San Antonio. He was a professor here at the Department of Biochemistry from 1982 until he retired in 2014. He ran a research lab at ETSU investigating bacterial ribosomal biosynthesis. And throughout his career, he published a total of 77 scientific articles describing the findings of his research. He also loved teaching. He was one of the professors for the biochemistry course that all the first-year medical students were required to take, including Greg and his wife, Heather. He was a mentor graduate students in the Department of Biochemistry, and over the course of his career, he had 12 graduate students obtain their PhD under his supervision. Some are here today. Many members of our family are educators as well. Scott's mom, Betty, and his wife, Judy, were both high school English teachers. His sister, Connie, taught elementary school. Another sister, Kathy, taught history in middle school. His brother, Tom, is a professor of anatomy at the University of Miami. And his sister, Chris, teaches print journalism at American University. My brother, Greg, and his wife, Heather, supervise and train residents here at the College of Medicine. And Dan instructs members of law enforcement in crime scene investigation. With all of these educators in our family and Scott's lifelong love of teaching, I felt that to begin to understand what Scott devoted most of his career to, I would begin the celebration of life with a short lesson in biochemistry at bacteria. I can't help but think that subjecting all of you to a lesson in biochemistry would put a smile on my dad's face. We go. What are bacteria and why are they important? Bacteria are single-cell organisms that have been around for about 4 billion years. In contrast, humans have existed for only 30 million years, over 100 times less. Bacteria live in every part of the world, from the top of Mount Everest to hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. They live on our skin and inside our intestines, and they're responsible for a large number of diseases in the human body.
That's why you took antibiotics, Jacob.
Strep throat, pneumococcal pneumonia, endocarditis, gastric ulcers, appendicitis, diverticulitis, necrotising fasciitis, leprosy, tuberculosis, anthrax, and the bubonic plague. About 8 million people die each year of bacterial disease. Antibiotics and sometimes surgery treatment for most bacterial infections. The bacterial clean. Through their billions of years of existence, they've evolved strategies to avoid eradication. Some bacteria have a coating on their cell wall that help them avoid detection in the body and also prevent some antibiotics from entering the cell. Bacteria can mutate their genes to degrade the effectiveness of other antibiotics. They can even share their genes with other bacteria to increase bacterial resistance to antibiotics. One target that antibiotics use is bacterial ribosomes. Ribosomes are the factories inside of the bacterial cells that take manufacturing instructions from RNA to create other proteins in the cell to allow the cell to function and to reproduce. If the antibiotic can shut down the factory, the cell will die or be unable to reproduce. Bacterial ribosomes are made up of two proteins, a 50S subunit and a 30S subunit. Scott spent a large part of his career studying the 30S subunit of bacterial ribosomes, investigating new methods and drugs to prevent this part of the ribosome from functioning. Other antibiotic targets include cell wall and membrane synthesis, DNA replication, and RNA production. Scott was the editor of and contributor to a book in 2008 titled New Antibiotic Targets. Each chapter of this book examined a different target for antibiotics and described methods to evaluate the effectiveness of antibiotics against each of the potential targets. In 2020, after he retired, Scott published a monograph describing 20 years of his research. His paper was titled Antibiotics Targeting Bacterial Ribosomal Subunit Biogenesis. It was published as the lead article in the April 2020 Journal of Antimicrobial Chemotherapy. Over 2 decades, 7 ETSU students and 2 master's students worked alongside Scott on this research. This final paper examined 52 antibiotics, including well-known drugs such as azithromycin and neomycin, in 6 different microorganisms. In his own words, Scott said, "One of the reasons I wanted to write this paper was to give credit to those who worked with me over the years to conduct this research. Since many of them only worked on it for a year or 2, I wanted to provide perspective of the entire project and the significant findings. My dad was an amazing scientist whose research has helped countless number of people suffering from potentially severe or fatal bacterial infections. He was also a lifelong educator, ensuring that future scientists and physicians would have the knowledge to continue to build on work." We are going to take a short break, listen to another one of Dad's favorite songs played by Alethea, and then Dan's going to tell you about Scott's life and interests outside of work.
Okay, did you listen to any of that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get what my uncle did?
Yeah, I got his job.
What?
I understand.
No, that antibiotics that you take to save your life, he helped create.
What brings me special? Oh, what brings?
I grab some.
Oh, I tried to run. You're down and out on the street.
I'm walking to the wrong house. That would be funny.
Taking oh, darkness come. You feel you're trying to try. Oh, you're from the when troubles come. Oh, everything is great.
Much taller than I am, obviously. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dan Chamley. I'm Scott's middle son. And like I said, I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that made my dad a person outside of work and family. Dad was an amazing person. He lived a life full of creativity and adventure and joy. And he was a man whose interests not only brought him joy, but brought joy to everybody around him. And he was comfortable with that, and he liked what he liked, and he didn't care what other people thought about his interests. If you ever saw his fashion sense, Lord knows he wasn't friends. But most of you guys know, and I think everybody probably saw, one of the things that he loved most was his models, his boats. There's one back here in the back if you haven't had a chance to see it, but that's really only one of many. There are 15 boats at the house. There's a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a drum set, a covered wagon, a cannon, and a Volkswagen car. And as my mom said, they're all pretty amazing. And Dad built every one of those. I still do two of those, and I don't have the skill to build them. So he built them for me. He kept them, but it's enough. Dad didn't see these. What's that? Yeah, I know. I know. But Dad didn't see these just as mere projects. They were a reflection of him and his creativity and his patience. And I think he liked the stories behind these because most of these boats are real replicas of actual boats. The Beagle that Charles Darwin sailed on, the Cutty Sark, which was a famous sailing ship, And one of Ernest Hemingway's fishing boats are all among his collections. In fact, Mom told me there's a sign out in front of the house that says the Chamonix Model Boat Museum, and a guy came over recently and was legitimately confused after which was appropriate. A lot of Dad's family is here. Dad loved traveling. He loved the outdoors and adventure. When we were young, we took more road trips than I can remember in this little old VW van. Lord knows how we survived some of those. Dad had built the inside of that van. There was a little fold-up table, and we used to just climb things on it and drive from Georgia to New York and all sorts of places. This little four-cylinder engine that always threatened to die on us. Sometimes we'd have to stop on the side of the road just to let the engine cool down. And of course, when Mike and Greg and I got older, Dad got us into the outdoors and into Boy Scouts. And we've never outgrown that. When Mike and Greg and I graduated professional school, we took some trips with Dad. We hiked the Grand Canyon. We sailed from Miami to Key Largo and back. We kayaked for 5 days in Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. I mean, these were more than just adventures. These were our bonding times with Dad. This was our friendship. You know, at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, we all had beer together. When we were on the boat to Miami, Dad got a hamburger that wasn't to his liking, and we never heard the end of that. And then when we got to Glacier Bay, we realized that the maps we were using maybe weren't exactly accurate. So we had an interesting discussion about that, mostly because Mike was causing problems. But we were mostly there to keep us moving. John was also very proud of his involvement in Scouts. He was an Eagle Scout. He was a vigil member of the Order of the Arrow. For those of you who are in Scouts or know about Scouting, to have both of those is really significant. He had worked as the lakefront director at Camp Tewaagayi near New Holland, New York. And then when we got into Scouting, he was always there. He was the troop committee chairman. He went on every camp out with us. And that has stayed in the family. My son Evan is an Eagle Scout. Brooks has been involved in Scouting. Harry just went to the Boy Scout Sea Base in Florida last summer. And then, of course, we know Dad as a musician. I know Craig Trevor is here, one of his friends from band and from work. And Dad had a passion for all kinds of music, rock, country, jazz, classical, just everything. But he didn't just enjoy listening to music. Of course, he wanted to make music. So he had been a percussionist in high school. Kind of took a break when we were little, but then he never lost that interest. And so when we got a little older and he had a little bit more free time, he got back into percussion. Started playing with the community band. And it got to be such a big thing with him that they had to buy different guitars just so they could carry these damn timpani drums around.
Lemonade.
You know, it was a big part of his life. His harmonica too. Dad also loved good food and good beer. I think he liked Mom's cooking most of all.
Have some of the Rice Krispie treat.
The hole in the wall, little out of the way places. He was a huge fan of the show Triple D or Dr. Trident to Die. And he liked those kind of off the beaten path places. And he was a real good cook in his own right. He had taken a cooking class with a guy named Fred Slossman many years ago, and then he and Mom started going to these New Year's Eve parties that we always heard about, always some theme, some different type of food. It could have been Moroccan or whatever, but they loved them. So those are some of the things about my dad that I remember. Some of the things that made him special. And I don't know if I can tell you this, but I think nothing made him as happy. This little lake behind us, just walking around this lake with my mom holding hands. I always think they're two 16-year-olds on their first date. I love you, Mom. Thank you, guys.
Jake, sit up, please. I'm serious, Jacob. Sit back.
Stay right to without saying a word. You're right at the time. Stars are in the here when it's all said and done. If ever I fall, stay there. When you say nothing at all. So you but when you hold me in, you drown out the crowd. You scream your heart fly. Your hands against me, if ever I fall.
An acknowledgement? You like just he passed away and you think about everything they did. They're singing right now. It's a little hard to hear. Hey, you're turning off whatever the hell you're listening to now. This is my uncle's memorial service. Turn the fuck off.
Your hand says you'll catch me if ever I fall. We stay in bed when you say nothing better. When you say nothing better.
Yes, that's it. So, Elizabeth, we love these guys. They're close friends of ours. They we gave them the songs earlier this week to learn. So in 3 days they learned these songs. So they're amazing. One more round. So when Mike and I got together, thought how we were gonna define that, we decided there were three major designs. Over in very detail, this is Dan more colorfully went over his interests, his travels, everything else. And I think my dad would say those are very important things to do. But I think he would have said the most important thing to him is all of them. Is all the people in his life, his family, his friends, all of us. For anyone who's ever met my dad, so the last song, you say it best when you say nothing at all. That pretty much sums him up. He is not what anyone would say. It works out well because my mom was happy to fill in. Basically, yeah. So in trying to sit down and figure out a way to describe everyone in this room and everyone outside this room, all the people that have known my dad and loved my dad, I figured because he was such a talker, the best way to do that would be to let him So, my mom, as everyone knows, was an English teacher for years. There's a type of poem that she used to have her students write. And then actually my sons and daughters have written the same poem at St. Mary's. It's called I Am From. This is a type of poem, especially for younger students, teachers write or have them write because it's autobiographical. So obviously it's something they know. It also teaches kids to kind of replace facts with images. So I'm going to read a poem to you all that I'd like to say my dad, I wrote it, but I wrote it as if mom had signed my dad and I from. Handsome shape. William Scott Champion. I am from. I am from Bill and Betty. From Cleveland to Williamsville to Huntington. From sailing on Long Island Sound to canoe trips in the boundary waters of the Pacific. From my dad's grummet wind tunnels to my mom's English classes. From Boy Scout camping trips to being an Eagle Scout. From playing third base in high school to swim practice without bathing suits. I am from 5 siblings. From Connie to Kathy to Carol to Chris. From being one of 3 kids, leaving Williams, to being a part-time resident of a sprawling house on the Sound. From mending my little sister's toes to finally getting a brother. From sailing the Wood Pussy into Huntington Harbor to the catastrophic collision on Grayson Lake. From being a sleepy college kid delaying Christmas morning to managing underwater real estate in the Florida Keys. From red wine and lamb chops in Stellenbosch to the world famous Chantley Talent Show, The Front Porch in Huntington. And from so many friends. From high school friends that show up in the band 40 years later, to scoutmasters that will never say no to a fried roast lunch or beer. From raucous grad student bands in San Antonio to quiet biochemistry lunch dates in Johnson City. From gourmet New Year's Eve parties to international ribbon classes. From meeting friends on walks around the lake to ETSU talks about trains and eagles. I am from my 3 sons. From swim meets to track meets to cross-country races to triathlons. From Philmont to the Grand Canyon to Key Largo to Glacier Bay. From Pinewood derby cars to broken down saws. From law school to med school to the FBI. From Saturday morning cartoons to Saturday Night Live. Far Side to the Blues Brothers. From why would we bring wine? To do we really need that much beer to go sailing? I'm from the 3 daughters I gave and the 8 grandchildren they've given us. From students to daughters to colleagues. From crochet needles, marathons, and flower farms. to armchair politics and philosophy. The oldest grandchild that somehow thinks biochemistry. The youngest that has made science fairs lucrative. Baseball and basketball games, to rock bands and dance recitals. From fierce independence to a little horse girl that finally broke it. To never winning a game of Go Fish, to knowing that I always could. I'm in front of my wife, Jude. From polishing silver for a tea party to a honeymoon in the Virgin. From driving lessons in the Mexico. From driving lessons in the Buffaloes to a cherished green VW convertible, moving us to Houston. From Illinois to California to Georgia to Texas to finally the mountains of Appalachia. From homemade blueberry pouch to lemon meringue to from never being the top to knowing my Italian wife would more than the job. Traveling the world together to quiet walks around Henderson. Never saying I love you. 58 years later, never missing a chance to. I love you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. We all loved him. Thank you all for showing up. You would have been very embarrassed by this. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Billy. Yeah. Thank you.
Heard there was a secret chord, David played, praise the Lord. You don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this, the boys of bed, the light fall, the bass, the proud composer. Yeah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Screw my boxes for I used to have go for I knew you. If I don't watch, the cloud is not a bit hard. Oh, it's so fun. Oh, I learned to love. Someone who loves you. It's a last moment. Oh,
And I know. Yeah.